Good evening and welcome to the Job Search Solutions radio program where we talk about looking for a job, changing jobs, changing careers, hiring. And as always, we begin with a prayer. Dear God, grant us thy peace and thy mercy, thy will be done. And as always, on Wednesday evenings, in just a moment, we'll have Rich Levinsky with us talking about consultants in the workplace. He always has a very intriguing and interesting and informative topic about consultants and their impact in the workplace these days and how they go about doing what they do. We've been spending 10 seconds being grateful. So think of 3 things today that you're grateful for. Go. You just can't be unhappy when you're grateful. That's all there is to it. Just can't be unhappy when you're grateful. What I wanted to talk about today is a little bit, this evening, is a little bit an aspect of what we've talked about once before. And that has to do with the fact that candidates, job candidates, forget that employers, especially in today's market, have a tendency to be suspicious. They don't trust what they see. They don't trust what they hear from candidates. They're suspicious. In markets that are robust, where things are going really well and they don't have to worry about the economy, they don't worry about if they hire somebody not so good, they fire them and let them go. Things are going real well. They're making a lot of money. They don't worry about it. But boy, when things are tough, they're real concerned about who they're hiring and how they're hiring them. And they're real careful. They take forever to do that. They're really suspicious about everything. Candidates, job candidates, have a tendency to think that employers, potential employers, have a tendency to see things on the bright side, see things on a positive side, the way they do. They don't. They see things very suspiciously. What brought this to mind was I had a candidate last week that in his interviewing was telling potential employers that in his last job, he got fired and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. It wasn't the best thing that ever happened to him. It was not a good thing. Probably not the worst thing that ever happened to him, but it certainly wasn't the best thing that ever happened to him. And to tout the idea that it was the best thing that ever happened to him was foolery. A potential employer is not going to think that you being fired is the best thing that ever happened to him. Now, from a philosophical point of view, from a learning point of view, it might have been, but don't do that. You've got to realize as a candidate that everybody is looking at everything you've done suspiciously, carefully. They're looking at it doubtfully. They're wondering why you did it, how you did it. They're looking at everything you've done critically. Everything that negatively, nothing in a positive way, unless it is absolutely for certain positive. So you've got to be able to present everything you do in as much of a positive way as you possibly can. And this business about turning a negative into a positive and how you turned your life around from being an alcoholic or a vagrant or living in the streets or whatever you think sounds really good to you isn't. They're comparing you to the 10 or 15 other candidates that they have available to them. And if it isn't 100% positive, 110% positive, you're not going to get to first base. So think about that. Everything you say, every reason you give for everything you've done needs to be positive. Now, that doesn't mean you go overboard, but it means that you be very careful about what you say and how you say it. Be very careful to be sure that you don't create a situation where you want to turn a very negative situation into a very positive situation and expect a potential employer is going to see it that way. They're not going to see it that way because they are suspicious. They are going to be suspicious about everything you do, everything that you've done, because they're concerned about everything that you've done because they're going to be held responsible for it. So just think about that. All right. We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. This is Tony Beshara with the Job Search Solution.